Games Workshop is keeping the World Eaters teasers and previews coming thick and fast. Today let's talk about their variant and more demonic way to play World Eaters that's also going to be inside the Codex. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're talking World Eaters once more and covering Games Workshop's rules teasers in the build-up to the Codex release this Saturday. Over the past few days, Games Workshop's given us a fair few previews, things like the Blood Tide and the Jackals over the last couple of days, which I have covered here on the channel. And today they've officially lifted the lid on the Disciples of the Red Angel, the way that you can play very demonic World Eaters with Angron. So Angron's Angry Demon Army is an army of renown within Codex World Eaters, officially called the Disciples of the Red Angel, and the way that these usually work is that you have to give up some options in the book to give some extra buffs and options to the ones that remain. I don't believe that they mentioned this at any point before, but it had been quite heavily rumoured. I think it's quite fun that it does exist, as it sounds like a bit of an attempt to make Khorne Demonkin return. That's definitely an army that a lot of people remember quite fondly from 7th. We'll talk about what Games Workshop has actually confirmed for us yet, but so far from the leaked rules it sounds like this one's going to act slightly differently to most armies of renown in Warhammer 40k right now. It sounds like it's going to be a bit more of a replacement for the main rules in the Codex, with the stratagems, warlord traits and relics subbing out the core ones, as opposed to just being bolt-on stronger options on top of the generic stratagems and things. So regardless of whether you play the Disciples, Formation or Core World Eaters, it sounds like you get similar amounts of supporting rules. I feel like that's a fairly interesting idea on paper, though to be fair I think they could still execute armies of renown pretty nicely in the old system. Things like the Orc Speed Mob worked quite well, building around a subset of the Codex and giving them a bit more support to make up for their shortcomings. In terms of the idea of the army, it does sound kind of fun. Basically Angron leading the most demonic World Eaters into battle. He's not exactly known for being the best of battlefield commanders rather than just getting things done by raw might, and I guess this more represents the kind of cult that forms around him and his sheer destructiveness. I guess that's maybe why there's more demons in this formation than otherwise. I quite like the harking back to Khorne Demonkin, though I do think it's kind of sad that it outright bans berserkers in the formation. It has to be demons in the army, and I feel like the Khorne Demonkin option was really quite good for mixing in the full World Eaters options with standard Khorne demons out of Codex Chaos demons. I feel like it might have been a bit more fun if they just kept them in, but obviously made most of the support go towards 8-bound and things, so the Khorne berserkers are there but maybe not the emphasis of the army. It sounds like first and foremost this is going to be an army that's almost entirely dedicated to Angron, 8-bound, and maybe the Juggernaut Lords and Demon Princes. Perhaps the cynical part of me feels like it could be a bit of a sales push for those models. The main choices in the army are basically going to be miniatures that literally no one has at the moment. I also wonder whether or not this was originally intended to be a Day 1 DLC sort of release in the Arcs of Omen Angron book, but they decided to change things about a bit after they got some negative feedback of that over the previous expansions, and then Games Workshop decided to make the decision to take all of the match play rules out of their campaign series and just leave that with boarding actions. I do also kind of wonder if this might be indicative of army design for 9th edition, maybe fewer upgrade choices for each army, but more distinctive ways to play each army. Multiple primary ways to field your miniatures, and then just swap out all of the warlord traits and relics and stratagems for a different set if you're playing the different variant. Could be kind of interesting, I think. In any case, getting into today's proper news, we do have the rules confirmations from Games Workshop. They basically soft confirmed that Angron does have to be the warlord. There's no mention that anything else will be possible, and that would fit with the leaks. And then the main focus of the army is that it's just literally for Demons of Khorne models, primarily World Eaters Demons of Khorne, so things like 8-bound, Angron, the Lord on the Juggernaut, who counts because he's got a Juggernaut apparently, and the Demon Prince and Demon Engines. They specifically say that Berserkers and Jackals aren't allowed. I'd guess that'd be the same for Terminators, and I'd guess that Khan the Betrayer also wouldn't be allowed either. Perhaps one of the most annoying things was they didn't confirm whether or not you could mix in allied demons or not. I guess that you would be able to take them in the normal patrol way as you can do in Arcs of Omen at the moment. I certainly hope so, as I feel like a Khorne Demon themed army with a bunch of World Eaters could easily have them in the lore. They also left it just a little bit nebulous as to whether or not the stratagems replace the ones from the main codex. They said that you'd have access to 8 stratagems, which kind of implies that they do, but they didn't 100% confirm that it prohibits the core ones. Otherwise, perhaps the biggest reveal from the article is that 8-bound and Exalted 8-bound get objectives secured. To my knowledge, I don't think that had been revealed by the leaks yet, so that is kind of interesting. Would mean that the Shock Elite could also be pretty solid at securing the objectives as well, though it doesn't look like they're enormously durable for the cost, at least at the moment from the rules that we have. I feel like they probably needed something to give them objectives secured if they're going to be banned from taking the normal troops choices. I guess in this army they're kind of teeing up the 8 bounds to be your main battle line troops. It does sound like there'd still be remaining an elite's choice though, which means that you'd only be able to take so many of them with the rule of 3. It could mean some slightly bigger armies with the disciples might run into problems once they max out their 8 bound allowance. Otherwise, again fitting with the leaks, it sounded like they've also got an option to give one unit of 8 bound a demonic infusion. This rule seems like a nice to have but not super impactful. Apparently when you're mustering your army you get to select one single 8 bound unit and you select one of the following demonic infusions for that unit to gain for the battle. There's one for counting as 2 models on objectives, I guess that's fairly significant alongside the OBSEC, and one for a 4+ save against mortal wounds. I'd guess that seeing as it takes place in the mustering your army set, you'd usually have to have that recorded on your army list, and you wouldn't be able to reactively flex it out as per opponent, at least by the rules that we have here. There was a third option in the leaks as well, which I suspect might just be missing from this list here. Apparently the third one is a damage dealer one with some mortal wounds on 6s to wound, and I feel like that one might be popular if it does turn out to be accurate. The boosts are quite nice, but only applied to one unit. I think it's just a little bit on the lackluster side. I think it'd be far more interesting if every 8 bound unit got one of those, but maybe they'd struggle to balance that with points and advantages and disadvantages. I feel like the 3 rules are kind of somewhat balanced if they are as rumoured. Damage is nice, but you might well have enough of that already. The mortal wound save is excellent, but only relevant in certain matchups. And the extra objective thing will be helpful when it matters, but again often it won't if you've got OBSEC and say your opponent doesn't. Moving on, we've got Stratagems, and Games Workshop have previewed 2 of the 8 here. These again seem exactly as rumoured, and both of these are perhaps some of the more powerful ones of the list, I think. Terrifying Assault is any World Eater's unit. It allows you to debuff one enemy unit by ignoring Overwatch and -1 to hit in melee when you charge them. That's really quite a nice cluster of debuffs, pretty handy to have if you're ever charging something scary, I guess. It'd definitely make charging something like an Imperial Knight covered in guns into a lot less terrifying affair. The other one is Blood Scent, and this one does look quite unpleasant for your opponent to fight against. When the enemy falls back from an 8 bound unit, you then get to consolidate 6 inches, potentially locking up that unit that fell back again if they don't have the movement to get away. It's a really big deal as it means that you could protect that squad from any sort of ranged firepower. You get them in with one unit and then that unit falls back and you lock them up again. Your opponent won't be able to shoot you with guns as you're locked in combat, and then hopefully unless they countercharge you, you get to hit them back in their own turn, potentially slaying one of their units dead. Really quite a big power trick there, though I would say it's probably a bit of a gotcha type moment if your opponent isn't ready for it. I'd say it's likely a good one to make your opponent aware of that you can do, just so everyone's on the same page. We'll run through the leaks rules for the formation in just a second, but the other thing that they previewed is the Skull of Angron. This is a relic skull where apparently she tells you the weaknesses of the foe. In the command phase you get to nominate a visible enemy unit to the bearer, and you get to reroll wound rolls in melee against that target. Really quite a nice one if you got a generic character. I feel like that might be one of the best of the rumoured relics, though I guess you would only be able to put it on the Juggernaut Lord and the Demon Prince, as they'd be the only 2 non-named characters with a demonic keyword. Still though, Anne's skull seems handy enough to have around. Otherwise, just to go back over the leaks briefly, which do seem to fit in quite well with these rumours, the other 2 relics are apparently a +1 saving throw and +1 wound, decent enough extra survivability for a Demon Prince or something I guess, and also some sort of upgrades to boost the Hellbolter profile with a D6 auto hit profile on the Demon Prince. Not knowing the new profile though does mean that that's a bit hard to compare. Apparently the Hellbolter profile on the Demon Prince is something like Heavy 3, Strength 5, AP 2 and Damage 2. Finally, here's the rest of the stratagems if you want to have a read. Again, the 2 leaked ones do fit in pretty well. There's an auto-advanced 6 one which is pretty handy, one to ignore charge modifiers, one for vehicles fighting on full profile, I guess that helps out the demon engines I guess, and one potentially very nice one which looks like it gives the 8 bound the blood surge mechanics, the one where if they lose a model they get to move a bit closer. Generally pretty helpful stuff. I feel like some of the ones they previewed though might be some of the best. Overall looks like the army could be interesting, but my guess would be that it's probably not going to be quite as strong as pure World Eaters. I guess only time and the full rules will tell us on that front though. In any case, let me know what you think of the new and previewed World Eater rules. I'll certainly be back hopefully as soon as possible when we get the full Codex news. I'll make a full review on the channel and talk through each unit. If you'd like to see that video then check back later or subscribe to Auspex Tactics. In the meantime, if you'd like to see a fairly in-depth breakdown of the Blood Tithe mechanic, I'll link that video from a couple of days back down in the video description. Otherwise, I'd just like to quickly mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description below as well. The Patreon page is how I can afford to keep on making videos full time on 40k and post new content just about every day. If you have been enjoying quite a lot, any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.